Good morning. Thank you for joining me, and thank you, Donna, for being our chair for the session and for joining us super early, especially after NACIS night out. As Donna said, my name is Limpisathian. I am a PhD student at the University of Oregon, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about and give you guys a preview of my ongoing research and frame my PhD research as I shift from cartographic visual contrast design to neuro-geographic contrast cognition. So if you were present at NACIS in Montreal last year, you might have been present at my presentation where I talked about and discussed the result of my master thesis from Penn State. So it was titled Towards Contrast Brewer, Visual Contrast and Hierarchy Relations of Cartographic Feature Across Multi-Scale Map Displays. And not to go into too much details about it, but I basically examined the relationship between the implementation of visual contrast and perception of visual hierarchy and aesthetic preferences. For that project, I made about 80 contrast schemes applied to 480 maps, some of which you see here, and then tested on 216 online participants. If you are interested in the result of that, I will refer you to the video that is available from NACIS, as well as this slide, which is available from my ResearchGate. But anyway, as a summary of that study, I found that, yes, user did have a preference for a particular configuration of visual contrast, which was high hue in combination with low lightness. But then more important than that, I found that as my quote says, clarity of perceived visual hierarchy and map aesthetics are together crucial for effective map communication. Poor implementation of one will infer the inadequacy of the other and diminish the overall communication goal. So I basically found that there was high correlation between whether the user thinks the map is well designed and whether they think the map clearly demonstrates the visual hierarchy and visual contrast within that map. And they are completely linked and cannot be separated and is empirically linked. But then at the end of that research, I came out with even more questions because I went in going in wanting to find like the answer of like the perfect visual contrast implementation. But I didn't really get that. I found that there was some patterns, but none of my 480 maps was like, yes, this is it. This is the answer Cindy and I have been working on. Okay, so then that got me thinking, if visual contrast itself isn't just merely a perceptual issue that can be solved away by showing enough maps to user, then what governs it? What is that higher level function? Which leads me to what I am interested in now, which is the next logical level above perception, which is cognition. So as you may already know, map cognition deals with understanding how the human brain processes geospatial information, and it deals with both lower level perceptual brain function as well as higher level cognitive function. It's built on a lot of psychological theories, but specifically, the part of map cognition I'm interested in, which is neurogeography, attempts to farther push this boundary and apply neuroscience as an empirical and experimental measure to test all of this. But still, there's a lot of map cognition research that has been done, but a lot of it focuses on how we human process the geospatial and spatial data itself, but not so much on how we process that data through our cartographic design as cartographers. Okay, so that got me going back and looking at the psychology that underpins a lot of our cartographic theory, which is Gestalt, as I assume most of you know, but as a reminder, Gestalt perceptual theory dates back to all the way in the early 1900s, and it describes how we human perceive what we see around us in terms of object formation, visual grouping, hierarchy, figure ground development, all that crucial stuff we do here in cartography. And then turns out I found that Gestalt has not aged well at all over in psychology. And psychologists have more and more questioned its validity and the lack of empirical support for it in the first place. As you can imagine, I was really surprised to find this when I was trying to do all these neuro-geographic research because much of my own master thesis relied so much on Gestalt principles and cartographic theories derived from Gestalt laws. So this made me realize how this questioning and questioning of the musing of century-old ideas hasn't really occurred here in cartography. And you can imagine how problematic this would be considering, again, that so much of our theories are derived from Gestalt. So I found this quote from psychologists, and I think it touches on the issue of how the psychologist sees it. So it says, theory of the Gestaltists has fallen by the wayside, leaving us with a set of descriptive principles, but without a model of perceptual processing. Indeed, some of their laws of perceptual organization today sound vague and inadequate. Okay, but so the start of my own research into all of this wasn't so rosy. So I wanted to know what exactly the neuropsychologists and neuroscientists have actually looked into in terms of visual contrast and related theories that we are interested in. Turns out not so much either. So I have the two column on the left side is cartographic contrast. I'm sure we're more than well aware of it. And then on the other side is some contrast done by neuroscience. So basically what they have done is, what they have studied has mainly been limited to lightness contrast, so luminance as they call it. And a lot of time it's as simple as having an outline of a tree and then seeing it at 5% versus seeing that as at 95% and then looking at your brain to see, like, can you still see the tree? So it's very basic and doesn't really contend with a lot of issues. And then it's primarily isolated to the primary visual cortex, which is in the back of your head, the occipital lobe, and is a lower level function. Okay, so that brings me to where I'm currently heading, which is at the intersection of geography and neuroscience, or as my advisor, Dr. Amy Lobin calls it, neurogeography. So basically, I want to look at whether how we perceive visual contrasts have an effect on higher level map cognition tasks and functions. So to do so, I am planning to pull from established map rotation cognition literature to use as the baseline of my own cartographic cognition project and research, and because map cognition research in spatial rotation cognition research is a well-established body of research. So in simpler terms, I just want to know, does visual contrast really matter as we cartographers contend, or does it not matter like some of the neuroscientists would like us to believe? To find out, I'm basically going to be putting people in MRI scanners. Fun fact, I just saw my own brain last week. That was cool. So while my subjects are in the scanner, I will have them do a map rotation contrast task. And I'll collect scans of their brain and see which part of their brain activates and how much that is. The analysis for that is basically a localized cluster analysis using a general linear model. You can sort of think of the brain as your personal three-dimensional space. So you have your X axis, which is weird. It's from your back of the head to your front. Your Y is your left, right, and then Z is your top going down. So and it's measured across time because it's brain function. So essentially, it's a spatio-temporal cluster analysis. Nothing we geographers, cartographers are not used to. Okay, something else that got me really excited about all of this is how I am able to, is the stuff I'm finding as I'm veering out into this research, and how I am able to look at other distinct field and find similar things that they are doing. Take neuroaesthetics, which like neurogeography exists at the intersection of art and science. So these neuro artists basically attempts to understand and study the perception of graphic media, just like what we do, but instead of maps, their media is the artwork itself. So it's basically what I'm doing, but without the spatial component. Even cooler is that they actually touch on a lot of the trends that people I know in this room are super interested in. So they talk about vividness, evocativeness, affective design, and emotional responses to artistic expression in design. They even have a set of artistic laws, which also includes contrasts. So I'm super excited about that. Okay, wrapping up a little bit. So my goals, hopes, and dream for all of this. So at the end, I hope to confirm what we cartographers know, that visual contrast is important and is more than just perception, and then also back it up with empirical evidence. At the same time, a part of me wondered that maybe the neuroscientists are onto something, or maybe they could be right. Maybe we still struggle with visual contrast itself because it might not really matter at a higher cognitive function. I sincerely hope this isn't the case, but we will see. The quote I have up here is something that I really like. I found it when I first started doing research in visual contrast, and it was present in my presentation last year. It's present in my thesis with Cindy, and it is present here. So basically it says, although cartographic text includes many guidelines for figure-ground relationship as a model for visual contrast development on maps, there have been surprisingly little empirical research to back it up. So this was true back when it was written in 1992, it's true in 2015, and it's still true, and I hope that at the end of my journey I can tell Alan, who co-authored this paper I pulled from, that that is no longer the case, and I can tell Cindy that Contrast Brewer is finally ready, and I've done all the cognitive and perceptual work, so it's ready for the map makers. Okay, to finish things off, I have a little bit of Easter egg. You might have noticed that this weird graphic pattern that I've used throughout my presentation, but did you realize that you were actually looking at my 480 master's map that I made? So I threw maps in there somehow, even though I haven't tested anything yet. It's just been rasterized and simplified. And that again highlights how cool some of the research I'm doing is. It's like we're trying to figure out where does the picture end and the map begin. Is this considered a map? Debatable. That is clearly a map. That is it. In closing, I'd like to thank the two intelligent women who has guided me through all of this, my former advisor, Cindy Brewer, who has been there from the beginning and opened my eyes to all of this all 6 years ago, and my current advisor, Amy Loben, who is not here with us, but is quickly training me in all things neurogeographic. Thank you.